In times of stress, our thinking becomes confused and distorted, and our short-term memory is suppressed. There's another scientific fact that your orbital frontal cortex is your prefrontal cortex, your frontal brain. It is your executive control center for all your social and emotional relationships. So, in times of stress, your thinking becomes confused and distorted, your short-term memory is suppressed, and your orbital frontal cortex is your executive control center for all your social and emotional relationships. Guess when that part of your brain develops? Comes online for females at 21 years old. For males at 23, 24. Until then, you don't even have a fully developed social and emotional brain. Now, if that's the case, you don't even have a fully developed social and emotional brain, now we tie into that. In times of stress, your thinking becomes confused and distorted, and your short-term memory is suppressed. Where do your children struggle the most? Socially and emotionally. Socially and emotionally. Oftentimes in school. In school, socially and emotionally, in school. What's happening in their brains? They're becoming stressed. What happens to the adults around them? They become stressed. So what happens in the relationship and in the environment? Everyone becomes stressed. And if you're stressed, your thinking's confused and distorted, and you can't remember, how can you learn? You can't. You can't. If you're stressed and your thinking's confused and distorted and your short-term memory suppressed, you can't learn. But when adults become stressed, what happens to their thinking? It becomes confused and distorted. What happens to their short-term memory? It shuts off. So guess what? Adults aren't able to remember that you can't learn in times of stress. So we just become a stressed out hot mess. And then we expect our kids to do better. And they can't do better because their brains aren't even developed yet. They're not even fully mature yet. And then what's our response? Einstein also says the definition of insanity is to do the same thing and expect a different result. So what do? We do the same thing and expect a different result. Where does the same thing come from? The same thing comes from the way we were raised and programmed. So now we're back in that first dimension, that past, that programming. When that programming turns on, we just do the same thing we've always done. And when you don't realize, when you're stressed and your thinking is confused and distorted and your short-term memory is turned off, and your past kicks in and you're doing the same thing you've always done, that you're going to get the same result over and over and over again. And that's why I say children don't grow better, they grow older. Because the traditional things that we do with kids just create more stress. The traditional things, the timeouts, the spanking, the consequences, the behavior charts, they only create more stress. And guess what cannot heal under stress? The brain. The brain cannot heal under stress. And really what this comes down to is helping to heal your child's brain. First, through helping to repattern your own. So the first and biggest and most important thing that you have to learn to do is to breathe. And you have to condition yourself. You have to practice it. You have to practice it not when you're stressed, because when you're stressed, it's too late. You have to practice it when you're sitting here. You have to practice it when you're driving. You have to practice it when you're standing in the mirror. You have to practice it when you sit down at dinner. You have to practice it when you're listening to your favorite song and you're standing in line at the grocery store. So we're going to practice it today. This bowl has two purposes. One, when we take a break, and I'm gonna at the end of the break, I'll ding the bowl, and then we're gonna start back. So I don't ever have to say, okay, we're gonna get started. Ding! That means come back to your seats. The second reason I ring this bowl is because it is a cue to take 3 deep breaths. So I want to give you an opportunity to practice your breathing. I've been carrying this bowl around for 23 years. The same bowl, 23 years. This was handmade by a guy in San Diego. At one of my lectures 23 years ago, I said, does anyone know where I can find one of those little bowls that you go ding? And a lady said, yeah, my husband makes them. And he brought this to my hotel room that night. So inhale through your nose, exhale out of your mouth. So, I'm going to drop one more pearl on you this morning. Breathing isn't just important for the sake of breathing. Now, this is deep. When you hold your breath, or your air is taken away from you, what eventually happens? Before you suffocate, what happens? You pass out. Remember when we were stressed out teenagers and we used to do that thing where you cross your arm and your friend would push on you till you hold your breath until you passed out, and everyone thought that was funny? That's what stressed out teenagers do. You pass out. But then once the air comes back, guess what happens? You just come back to life. Right? But when you pass out, your heart keeps beating, your digestion processes keep going, your brain keeps going, your nervous system keeps flowing. You just pass out. You lose conscience. You lose consciousness. That's the only thing that happens when you pass out is you lose consciousness. Now listen to this. If I hold my breath and I pass out and I lose consciousness, then what does it imply my breath is actually doing? Bringing me consciousness. Your breathing is your access to consciousness. And guess what consciousness is? Because when you stop breathing and you start holding your breath and stress increases, which is your cortisol, guess what stress is tied into? All your cellular system constricts into survival. And guess what emotion that is? Fear. You start to panic. So when you're not breathing, you move into fear. So if when you're not breathing, you move into fear, when you are breathing, you have access to what? Love. Love. Breath is love. Take you a step further. Breath is God. When you're breathing, you are breathing in the essence of God. You are breathing in the essence of love. When you are breathing, you can think clearly. When you are breathing, your short-term memory can be available. When you are breathing, you have access to power. Power. When you stop breathing, you are powerless. Powerless. That's how important breathing is. I'm going to go a step further because tomorrow I'm going to be in Tulsa. Golly, we've got so many kids. It's hard to remember which are. You can't. When you have so many kids, you can't say my oldest or my youngest. One of my kids. So my 21-year-old is going to come to my lecture tomorrow in Tulsa. And when she was about 2 years old, and so I want to bring this point home for you, and please understand that I was talking to my wife and I was talking to Jasmine yesterday on the way here, and I was like, I need to be able to shorten shorten some of the things that I'm talking, because I got so much information to put into so much time. Where can I take out some slides? And Jasmine was like, well, you could probably not go off on tangents. As I'm about to go off on a tangent. But I try to have all my tangents mean something for you. So I used to have a group homes in Colorado, and my wife at the time, which is Marley's mother, she and I were out at the group home with Marley, and Marley was born with spina bifida, so she's been in a wheelchair since she's a baby. So she doesn't walk. So it was early one morning, we'd been out there for about a week, and it was kind of stressful. We were with kids, we're going through the stuff. And it was like 7:30 in the morning, and I'm sitting out. It's Denver, so it's beautiful. It's out by the airport, and 7:30 in the morning, the sky's beautiful. I'm sitting out there with a couple of my staff. We're just talking, probably having coffee, hanging out. And all of a sudden, I hear a blood-curdling scream, and it's Christy, it's Marley's mom. And immediately, I was like, whoa! It's that kind of scream where this is where my brain went to. My brain immediately went to one of the kids was on their dirt bike because we were on a dirt road. My brain immediately went to one of the kids was on a dirt bike and got hit by a car. It was that kind of scream. So I jumped up from the back and I ran to the front and I look, no one's out there. And then I hear Christy scream again. I'm like, oh, she's downstairs. That's where in our bedroom where we've been. So I run back, I run downstairs, and I'm like, what's going on? And she said, she can't breathe. She can't breathe. So my little 2-year-old, sitting there on the floor, Christy said she got a bottle cap in her, she swallowed a bottle cap, and it's one of those bottle caps about that big around. So Marley had been playing with bubbles and put that cap in her mouth, and then it went down her throat, and it had the little perforations on the bottom. And so I immediately grabbed her up, do the Heimlich. That ain't working. Hitting her back. At this point, she's turning blue and purple and red, and I bang her, turn her upside down, I bang her again, I stick my finger in there. I can touch it. And as she got teeth, right? So she clenched in. And I stick my finger in there, and I can touch it. And as I touch it, I can push it. And she goes, so I can push it just enough to open the pathway, but I can't get it out. So I'm like, hey! And then she back to, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. Doing everything I can, and this is within minutes. Doing everything I can. And then all of a sudden, let me tell you what my brain starts doing, and this is what our brains do. So I love this, not only because I was birthed into what I'm sharing with you all today as an adopted child, I was birthed into this process. So I understand this at a really innate level and grew up in a challenging home, so I really understand all those dynamics, but then I get to live these experiences. So when I tell you in times of stress, your thinking becomes confused and distorted, and your short-term memory is suppressed, I'm not bullshitting you. I'm like, this is real. So as I hit that bottle cap and I can't get it out, and I'm Heimliching and I'm turning, I'm doing everything I can possibly do because my 2-year-old is freaking dying, my brain starts to see the ambulance. I kid you not, my brain sees the ambulance coming down the street. I see the paramedics. This is in my head. I see the paramedics coming down the stairs to pick up my dead child. My child is going to die in my arms. That is what I'm seeing in my head. I am losing it. And all of a sudden, and I'm not a little guy, my arms went limp. And I'm on the floor. I'm on the floor. Her mom's on the floor. Marley's almost to pass out. My arms go limp, and I look at her mom, and I say, I can't do it. I can't get it out. And my arms are just noodles. I mean, I had nothing. My arms were noodles. And in that moment, God tapped me on my head, boom, and said, breathe. And I went, all the power came back in my arms. I put my fingers through those clenched teeth down there, and I got that bottle cap and pulled it out. Pulled it out. And then was just flooded with adrenaline. Because had I not breathed in that moment, she would have died right there in front of me. So that is like such an extreme example for what you're going through today and what you're going to go through this afternoon when you get home to your child and your child lies to you, or he hasn't cleaned his room like you asked him to, or he got a bad grade at school, or she won't come sit down at the dinner table, or she kicks you in the leg. It's all the same. It's going to cause you to get stressed. And when you get stressed, you're not going to breathe until today. The first thing you're going to do, when Bruce Lee said, the most powerful thing you can do in life is to master the ability to be calm. What he was saying, that unless you are breathing, your thinking is confused and distorted and your short-term memory is shut off. So when you breathe, after your kid goes bam or yells or does whatever crazy stuff kids do when they're stressed out, because that's why children act out. Children act out because they're stressed out. That's very simple. Children act out because they're stressed out. The problem is we get stressed out when they're stressed out, so then everybody's stressed out. So who's got to learn to breathe first? We do. The adults do. We've got to breathe. So you're going to breathe instead of getting stressed. And when you breathe, all of a sudden you've got this access to this new power. This new power of consciousness. And breathe some more. Breathe all you can. And don't even worry about what your kid's doing. And let me tell you why that's powerful. Because right now your brains are conditioned. Your brains are conditioned. So your brains are conditioned to do what they've always been doing. Literally, you got pathways that are now conditioned. So when your kid kicks you or does whatever they do, your brain is conditioned to go a certain way, go a fear-based way. Your child's brain is now conditioned because they know what you're going to do, so theirs is going to go a certain way. So they're going to go bam, and then they're going to be like this. Because they know what's going to happen, and you know, before today, you would have been like this too, and then we're going to go into round one. But today, what you're going to do is they're going to kick or whatever crazy thing they do, and you're going to go, and then you're going to say, I'm not going to die. And the reason you're going to say that is because your brain stem, at the base of your brain, as soon as you get really stressed, it is connected to survival. So your brainstem immediately is creating an energy within your cellular system that says, I'm going to die. But you're going to take some deep breaths, and you're going to say, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to die. And you're going to keep breathing. You're going to keep breathing, and guess what your kid's going to do? They're going to go from here. They're going to go like, what's going on? I'm not sure. What are you doing? That's exactly what's going to happen. And it's going to freak you out a little bit. Because you're like, whoa, I got access to this power I didn't know I had before today. Now you can just keep growing that. You can keep growing it, you can keep growing it, and you can keep growing it. And before you know, the relationship is getting better and better and better. And that all starts with breathing. That all starts with breathing. And I've been teaching this stuff for 25 freaking years. Written 18 books. I should just write a book that says breathe. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll just write a book. On one page, it's going to say breathe. And on the other page, it's going to say do not fear. And then the other one is going to say breathe. And the other page is going to say do not fear. Breathe, do not fear. You know, a woman made like $5 million writing a book, Everything Men Know About Women, and it was just blank. She made like $5 million with that book. It was a cover. Everything Men Know About Women, you open it, and it was blank. So I can do breathe, do not fear. All right. In times of stress, our thinking becomes confused and distorted. Our short-term memory is suppressed. This is a very real thing. It comes from Joseph Ledoux, New York University neuroscientist, author of the book The Emotional Brain, Albert Einstein. Everything is energy. I want you to hold that. I want you to hold that intention and that frequency that is so important. Everything we do is just an exchange of vibration. Everything we do. Everything we do is an exchange of vibration. All right, so here's where this all starts. This starts with me and my sister. Me and my sister. And this is where it starts for you. You were all babies at some point. But here's where most seminars don't start. They don't start by talking about you as a baby. They start by getting you to think about your child as a baby, even if they do that. Science tells us as early as the 4th week after conception, the fetus can hear, starts to form the mechanisms for hearing. As early as the 2nd trimester, the fetus is capable of psychological processing. So by the 2nd trimester, you're already thinking. John Bowlby, who's the father of attachment, said the first 3 years of our lives establish the blueprints for all of our future social and emotional relationships. What we know from the decade of the brain is that from conception to 5 forms the blueprints for all your future social and emotional relationships. Because by the time the human brain is 5 years old, it's 97% developed. 97% by the age of 5. In the first conception to 1 year of life, your brain forms, listen to this, 1 million neural connections per second. Per second. In the first year of life, your brain is forming 1 million neural connections per second. Per second. So I want you to ask yourself perhaps a question that you never considered before. What were your first 9 months of life like? What was your in utero experience? Where was your mother? Where was your father? Where did they live? What was the time of year? What was going on? And then what were those first 3 years like? Take a moment and think about that. And I asked you about yourself. Didn't even ask you about your child. Now think about your child. What was your child's first 9 months like? You might not even know in some instances of adoption. Might not even know. My first 9 months, my biological mother got pregnant out of wedlock. She was married and got pregnant by another man. She had 3 other kids. She got pregnant and it didn't work out with my biological father. She had to tell her husband. He was in another country. And someone, my dad or her husband, one of the two, said, you need to have an abortion. I never knew that. My biological dad said he tried to find me. But what my biological mom said is, I loved being pregnant. I ate the right foods. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I exercised. I loved being pregnant. So that went into my early wiring experience. Everything matters. Everything she did is wired into my brain, in my brainstem. So her loving being pregnant helped me experience love at a foundational level of who I am. She said she knew she could not keep me at 7 months. She thought that her oldest sister was going to adopt me. But then her oldest sister said, I can't because he's going to get older and he's going to realize I'm not his mom. So then I ended up getting placed for adoption. But that was the framework of my early life. Now, as an adoptee, as children in foster care, every adopted child, every child in foster care who has been separated from that early biological figure has experienced trauma. That trauma is indelible. It imprints the brain. It leaves you with a lifelong experience of fears of abandonment and not being good enough and insecurities. A core foundation. You are now wired with that core. And you will have to navigate that for the rest of your life. I still navigate those experiences. As a 52-year-old man who teaches the stuff, I navigate it. So imagine how challenging it is for a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old who doesn't even know it. They don't even know it. Your children don't even know they don't feel good enough because they had loss as infants. They don't even know it. Not to mention some of you whose children were in foster care and were in not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 moves. All that is energetically, it's compounded as you're not good enough. You're not good enough. That's what those constant moves imply. You're not good enough. So it just gets compounded, not at a conscious level. It gets compounded at an unconscious level. So then I was fortunate because I was only in a couple of little short foster placements before I was born. So no birth complications, no issues. So my core foundation was really good. And then I get adopted by my mother and father, and there I am as a little baby. As happy as I could be. In fact, my mom says, when we got you, you were smiling. As happy as I could be, given the circumstances. Now, they couldn't tell that as a baby, they couldn't tell that that little baby doesn't feel good enough. They couldn't tell that that little baby is insecure, that little baby's fearful. They couldn't tell that that baby has a stressed out brain. All they see is a sweet little fat baby, just looking like a little love-drunk monkey. Now you contrast that look of that baby to this look over here. This is my sister. My sister, she was conceived to a single mom who didn't have anyone. Maybe had alcohol exposure, maybe some marijuana exposure. There was a lot of stress. She was born 3 months premature. She weighed 3.5 pounds. You can fit 3.5 pounds in the palm of your hand. 3 months. You're essentially, psychologically, that's called failure to thrive. She spent the first 3 months of her life in an incubator in the 70s. I always like to say, when you think about temperatures, you think about cold and you think about warm. If I say incubator in the 70s, what temperature does that resonate with? Like cold. Cold. So her earliest blueprints of her life were survival, cold, stress, just trying to live. So if you look at her eyes, those are the eyes, and research has confirmed this, those are the eyes of a stressed out infant. They're big, and why are they big? They're big in order to take in more stimulation of what's going on in the environment. Because that's why when we're scared, we go, oh, because you're trying to predict. You're stressed out, you're scared. Now, a lot of times, just day-to-day life, we see a kid, little baby with big eyes. We're like, look at them big old eyes and big marble eyes. Oh, how cute. As we're walking towards them like this, freaking them out even more. We just don't know. We just don't know. How many times do you see the new parent with the infant walking through the airport or the mall with the infant on the little sling and the infant's facing out, being completely overwhelmed by stress? Now imagine going through an airport or a mall with someone pushing you from behind and you couldn't stop. And we do that to babies all the time. Eyes is the most direct way. Eyes is the most direct way, through your vision, the most direct way to stimulate your frontal brain. Your frontal brain. So my sister struggled. I struggled. We struggled. But it's because of that struggle that I get to be here with you all. If it wasn't for that struggle, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have this message. I wouldn't have this story.